Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Spirit and Soul podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Cohen. Today, we're going to get into it, okay? Because we're talking about the energetics of self-abandonment. Now, this is something I truly don't think is talked about enough because we are constantly looking to the outside of ourselves for things in our lives. We're looking for answers, we're looking for signs, we're looking for, truths and belief systems and things like that. And we're constantly looking outside of ourselves. And what I'm a big believer in is that, and I say this all the time, is that the soul already knows the way. The soul knows who you're meant to be, who you can be. And that's such a beautiful thing. But when you are going through your 3D reality and you're in situations where, maybe there's, you feel bad or there's an emotional attachment or there's like an expectation that you feel like you need to live up to, you can really abandon yourself and then also begin to lose yourself. And I think that every single person on this planet goes through self-abandonment in some way. And for some, it's light. They know their worth. They know they're not people pleasers, which most of us tend to be people pleasers, whether we're on a big scale of it or a small scale. There's people pleasing aspects that come with, I think, just being a human sometimes and feeling bad or, wanting to be there for somebody or saying yes, when you should be saying no. And when that's all that you want to say is no. And so I think that we all have that tendency in ourselves. But I think that every single one of us goes through self-abandonment in some way. And then it can really just pile one on top of the other until you actually just lose yourself. So self-abandonment is the act of leaving yourself emotionally, energetically, or spiritually in order to really keep the peace around you, in order to earn approval, in order to avoid conflict, which is a really big one, or to like fit into an identity that either maybe you've outgrown or don't really resonate with. And it's really what's happening here is it's when you're overriding the truth of who you are. So let's start to break this down a little bit. Now, self-abandonment, I think, really starts happening when you're a kid, because I think that we are taught, and no shade here, like this, you have to raise your kids with an understanding of what is polite and what is like things like that in the world. You have to, okay? So that they can go to stores and not rip things apart, and they can go to restaurants and not be screaming and yelling and all of those things, right? Like you do have to teach your children how to be in public, right? And I'm a big believer in this, that they can't just be wild all the time, right? Like we do have to contain ourselves in some places, in some moments. We have to, right? But I think that when you are fitting into a mold, when you're trying to be like you're trying to fit that peg into the hole, and you're like, okay, we got to like keep fitting that peg in. We can't be that square peg in a round hole. Like you can't be that, right? And it's like, why not? Like, why can't we on some level? So yes, there is a way to be out in public, right? And we teach our kids this, and we are taught this as kids. And then it doesn't stop. And then it's like, oh, well, I better not be too loud. Oh, I better not be this. And we take the things outside of the context that they're meant in. So maybe you're not supposed to be loud in a museum, right? Or loud in a library. But then outside of the library, you're outside, going for a walk or whatever, and you can be loud and you can do those things, and that's okay. So it's really what truths are being defined in these moments. It's like, well, do I always have to? Well, I think I always have to be quiet. Or I think I always can't speak up. Right. And it's when we create a truth for ourselves and how to be and who we are that continues and perpetuates outside of the circumstances that they are meant to be in. Now, I'm saying this lightly also because I know that there are some people, and I've had many, many, many clients. I've worked with so many people, and everybody has their own stories, right? And I've worked with so many people that maybe they were meant to be quiet everywhere, right? Seen, not heard everywhere. And that really grates on who we're meant to be, because I'm a believer that we're not meant to be quiet and docile all the time. We're not meant to be that person. And yet, not that you have to be screaming from the rooftops and stuff, but I think that there is a part of us that is meant to use our voice. Truly. Like you are meant to use your voice. You're meant to speak up for yourself, to speak out, to stand up for yourself. But when you're constantly taught like, oh, don't rock the boat, that's conflict. You should be seen and not heard. Then we begin to embrace this as a truth in our lives, and it continues. And then what happens is every time you don't open your mouth, every time you don't speak your truth, you are abandoning who you truly are. And we may not even recognize the way that self-abandonment shows up. We may not even recognize that we are abandoning ourselves, but we are. So like every time you say yes when you want to say no, every time you minimize your needs for others, right? Like you're like, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. I actually just talked to somebody today, and like she's like almost 9 months pregnant. She is in so much pain when she's walking. She has sciatica so bad, and she like tore her hamstring, and she's like, oh yeah. And I just kept telling myself like, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. She's like, but today I'm not okay. And I'm like, oh my God, you were never okay. Like in all of this time, like you were never okay. And it was always okay to admit that you were not okay. Right. So it's things like that where you're abandoning yourself. Like you feel like you can't ask for help, or you feel like you can't be quote unquote weak or vulnerable. Right. And it's like, no, 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 no. It was never ever meant to be that way. Like you're always meant to speak up for yourself, to say the things, right? It's when you're staying silent, when you know that something's off, you know something's not right. You can feel it intuitively, and then you don't say the words, you don't do the things, you still do it because you feel like you have to, even though intuitively you were getting the hit not to do it, right? Um, Also, another big one, choosing harmony over honesty. So that means that you don't want to rock the boat. You want to avoid conflict at all costs. And while, I think that I actually do think that conflict can be a good thing if we learn to allow ourselves to handle it well, to not feel bad, not have it taken to heart, but be able to speak and communicate with others, and then have someone communicate back to you. And as long as the conflict is being done in a way where you can speak openly and freely, then conflict is not a bad thing, right? It's just a way for us to be able to communicate about something that we don't agree on. And when you're abandoning yourself by just going along with everything, saying yes, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, okay, yeah, I agree, when you don't really, that it becomes a problem for you. Because what happens is, as you abandon yourself, you actually begin to lose yourself. And you keep doing it over and over and over again. And at one point, you will lose yourself. So, what happened to me was when I was in corporate America, I'll tell you about when I didn't even realize that it was abandoning myself, but I had a moment. And my moment was I was in corporate America. I was in definitely a toxic environment, and not that it was the environment itself was toxic in my office, but I think just corporate America can have that, especially when you're dealing with billions of dollars like I was. There's a certain toxicity that's just going to come with it when there's also levels of greed, et cetera, that you're working with. And it was a very stressful environment. And I often had to be somebody that I wasn't. I often had to fit a mold and become somebody in order to rise up, in order to, be noticed and be seen and all of those things. And I felt like I had to be a person that I wasn't. And not that there weren't glimmers of myself. I always showed up as me, okay? As funny, and I would actually sometimes anyway speak my points and my truth when I got a little bit more comfortable there. But for the most part, I was trying to fit into a mold of somebody that I didn't feel like I was. And also finding humor in things that didn't really make me laugh, that maybe it felt more mean than funny to me, but like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. And one day, and there was a lot of like finger pointing, like pointing the finger at someone and saying like, oh no, it was because of them. Oh, they did it. Oh, they did it, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, like, I didn't want to be doing that, but I also didn't want to get in trouble for something I didn't do, but everything felt off. So one day, Andrew and I, before we were even married, we were in the grocery store, and I had told him that I needed graham crackers, but they had to break in half, not in quarters. And he went looking for it. I was doing other things, and he came back and he's like, I can't find ones that only break in half. I can only find ones that break in quarters. And I'm like, ah, so I got so mad and like frustrated over this. I'm like, oh, why can't he just open up his eyes and like find it and like see that? So I'm like walking down the aisle, like, that's it. I'm going to prove him wrong. And I'm walking down the aisle and I'm looking at the graham crackers, and there were no graham crackers that broke in just half. They were only in quarters. And in that moment, I felt like a version of me that I saw at work. And I started crying in the middle of this cookie aisle. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. And Andrew's looking at me like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you crying in the cookie aisle over this? And I, though, was so disappointed in myself. Like, I didn't recognize who I was. And it was that moment that I kind of realized now, if I look back on, I could put the word self-abandonment, but that I realized like I was abandoning who I was. Like I kind of made a point with myself that I would never abandon myself like that again, that I would never not be who I was at work. Now, of course, you have to conform and things like that. Yes. But if I didn't like something, I wasn't going to be that person because I had to be, because I felt like I had to be. And that made a huge difference for me. That was a big turning point because I would not be someone anymore that I didn't want to become. And, I'm also saying this lightly. It doesn't mean that I didn't have to do things every now and then that I didn't want to do, but sometimes it was part of the job or whatever, and I would have to. But for the most part, that I wasn't abandoning me, who I was at my core. And I wasn't a finger pointer. I wasn't that person. So, this is where I noticed it. Now, maybe at home right now, you are thinking to yourself, like, all right, well, how am I abandoning? Because I'm telling you, you're abandoning yourself in some way. So there are, I think, things that you can look at, right? And I think we talked a little bit about childhood and childhood conditioning. Definitely the easiest one of all, right? You have to be the easy one, the strong one, the capable one. You have to be, and you learn this in childhood of like who people think that you are. And then you think you have to fill that role, right? The other thing is learning to be the fixer all the time, right? That is a way that you can abandon yourself because you're not there to fix everybody else's problems. You're not there to fix everything about in your family, in fact. Like you're meant to just be, and sometimes you may be, especially like if you're the person that everybody comes to with their problems, like that is considered like a healer to me. But you're not meant to then go out and actively fix that person's problems, and their problems become your problems, and you're up at night over somebody else's problems. Like you're not meant to be that person, right? Like people have to, you're actually doing the person a disservice by being the fixer in their lives, right? So, and you're abandoning your own life, your own self for somebody else. Also, big one. If you grew up in a family where your feelings weren't welcome. So you were sad, you were, and they were, oh, don't cry. Stop crying right now, right? Like things like that. If you felt like you were voicing your opinion and then all of a sudden people are telling you you're dramatic, right? Oh, you're so dramatic. Look, she's so dramatic, right? Like that's you then later on. So like you're just being you and you're being told you're dramatic for expressing your feelings. And now you feel like you can't express your feelings in the world. You feel like you have to hold everything in. You feel like you are dramatic if you respond to things. And that is a way that you're dimming your light, right? And really self-abandonment comes down to kind of dimming your light. Also, one big one, because I see this a lot in women, moms especially, it's the self-abandonment is like when you feel like you have to handle everything. So like you're the person that has to do everything, handle everything. You have to run all the kids around you to their sports and school and all the things. And their friend's house and this and here, and then you have to come home and you got to cook dinner and you got to clean the house and then you got to do that, then you got to work and then you have to be the friend to everybody and you got to be on the phone fixing everybody's problems, right? Like that is you projecting out and not having any focus on yourself, and that's not okay. Okay. So we really want to make sure that you're starting to take the step back and looking at the roles that you play in your life, looking at the roles you play in your family, in your friend group, and see how they make you feel. Because if there's a relationship or a situation that you're in, like maybe it's work or whatever it is, a PTA, I don't know, right? But some things like that where you feel like you feel a little lost or empty inside, I can guarantee you that you're abandoning yourself in some way. And the biggest thing with this is just self awareness, right? Like I always say this, like the best thing you can do for your life is to be aware of you, aware of yourself, how you show up, what what your responses are, reactions are to things, right? Like all of that, the more self-aware you can be, the more you can catch yourself in these things, and then ultimately you can do something about it. But if you don't know that they exist, then you just continue to move on with your life and you feel empty and lost and all these things, and you don't want to feel like that. What's very interesting to me is I see this a lot in healings. I see a lot how self-abandonment shows up. And in especially in spinal energetics work, how it's held in the body. So I'm going to say these things to you, and I want you to start to really feel into your body and start to feel like how deep maybe does this go? Because like I said, for some people, they're not abandoning themselves. For some people, they're like, no, I refuse to be anybody else but me. I refuse to do this. So maybe they do in some tiny ways, but they're not doing it in really big ways that affect them. And that might be you. And if that's you, I am so excited for you. I'm definitely not a person that abandons myself anymore that I can see. Again, I think I'm pretty self aware, but I definitely used to. Definitely used to. I know that. I know that about myself. So now I work to make sure that if I do something or say yes to something, that it feels good to me in some way. It feels good that for me to say yes. And in spinal energetics, I see when somebody has abandoned themselves, or I see when somebody really like is people pleasing or like not giving to themselves in many ways. So start to feel into the body right now and lean into the body a little bit. Maybe you can close your eyes only if you're not driving or like doing something where you can get hurt. Okay. And be smart about it, guys. But maybe close your eyes and just feel into the body. And when I say the word self abandonment, feel into where you feel it the most. It might be in your throat, it might be in your belly, in your heart. It's interesting to me because I can tell by just the way someone stands if they're like protecting their heart, which happens a lot with self abandonment. If they're, because then if you're protecting your heart so much, what happens is your shoulders will actually slump over your heart, right? So you kind of have that almost like a little bit of a hunchback or like a little bit of that protected heart aspect to the body. or shoulders really come in on the body and stuff. So there are definitely ways that the body really holds this self-abandonment. And that is one of the ways. So I would say absolutely in the heart space. And absolutely, I see it in the solar plexus, especially around the diaphragm area. And why I think it sits there is because it actually will, think about your diaphragm, right? Like if you feel restricted in your diaphragm, you feel like you can't breathe. And that's basically what self-abandonment is doing. You're like constricting yourself so much and like who you are, where you just like you can't breathe. Like you have no life force going in there, right? Your breath is your life force. So you have no life force going into you, right? And the seat of your soul is in your heart space for sure. So you see that it's in that area of the soul and the life force, where the life force is breathing into the lungs, but also through that diaphragm, opening it up and allowing it to expand, to be in the expansion state, right? So I see this a lot within the physical body, that when somebody is not doing right by themselves, that a lot of times it's being held there. And then I see it a lot in the root chakra. And why the root? Well, the root chakra is at the base of the spine, and the root chakra is going to be your safety of security, stability. It's going to be like where you feel safe. So if you don't feel safe to speak your truth, if you don't feel safe to express your emotions, if you don't feel safe to say no, then your root chakra is really going to be off. But what I will say, just in my, own experience, and anybody that, everything is take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And also everybody has their own truth. So another spinal energetics practitioner may say that they feel it somewhere different. But for me, where I see it come up the most is there. But I actually will see it present itself secondary in the root, because it still is sitting in this heart, solar plexus, diaphragm area. And that's where I will really see it the most. So now that I'm saying this to you and you're breathing into this, and of course the throat, right? So you might see it in the throat because you're not speaking up for yourself. You're not speaking up for your truth and who you are. So a lot of times we're saying yes when we should be saying no, or we're saying like, yeah, I got this, or I'll do it. And you're not really actually speaking truth for yourself. So that's why the throat also. But feel into now where you're holding it. And if you feel like you're holding it in your heart space, why? Right? Like, what are you doing to be actually abandoning yourself? Is it that maybe you're not even sure anymore because you haven't really ever asked yourself that question? Maybe it's because you are not going to, maybe you're not expressing your emotions, right? That's a lot that's held in the heart space. So really dive into that and start to feel into the body of where you might be holding these things. And they're going to say a lot. And if it is in the throat, well, how are you not speaking that truth, right? So now you have to start asking yourself this question and see that. So also, I think that this is a true nervous system situation, right? That's what spinal energetics is. But really what's happening is you're misaligned through the nervous system. You're sitting in those places. When I say misaligned, is what I mean is you have this area where you're really in your stress state, right? Like you're such deep into your stress state that it's hard. You're not coming ever back out of the stress state and into that rest state. And your rest state is what you need, because you have to, again, give back to yourself. So it's amazing to see how people hold it in the body and how you can feel into it the second that you ask the questions. So now what happens is, I see this a lot because I work with a lot of high achievers. I have a lot of high achieving friends, and I see this a lot in high achievers. Because, and you may be a high achiever and feel like you're a high achiever in your life. And I want you to really sit with this for a moment, because a lot of times, and high achieving doesn't mean just career success. It could be like high achieving as a mother, high achieving as whatever, right? In your, whatever your hobbies are, right? In fitness, whatever it might be for you. But what happens is high achievers are trained to push through discomfort. And yes, you have to, okay? You have to. We have to learn to be resilient. And resilience means that we do kind of have to push through those certain things. But how often are you doing it? How often are you sitting in this resistance energy, this discomfort energy, and continuing to push through without ever asking yourself, what do you actually need? What is actually needed here? So, what's really happening? What's the energetic cost of abandoning yourself? My goodness. Well, the energetic cost of abandoning yourself is number one, manifestations just tend to go slower that affect that area, right, of the body, that affect that area of calling in it. Because if you are always saying yes to everybody else, then you're saying no to your dreams. You're saying no to the things that you really want. The other thing is your intuition is going to become a lot quieter because you're not listening to yourself. And that's tough because we need our intuition. We need that energy of being guided by something else, please, dear God, other than our logic, but other than our mind. I'm telling you, magnetism, I think, drops off because you're not living for yourself. You're living for everybody else. So that internal magnet really has a hard time turning on. And also law of attraction, if your magnet was on full blast, you're just going to keep attracting more of the frequency that you're in. You kind of don't want that. So I feel like it could be a good thing, but the magnetism to the things you actually want, it's not going to work because you're not vibrating at that frequency. And also you feel resentful. Right? Like you feel resentful for your life. You're like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. And you also probably, just going to say this, you probably thrive off saying how busy you are. Oh, I'm just so busy. That's life. What are you going to do? And it's like, no, but like, are you busy because you're saying yes to the things that actually light you up? Or are you saying yes to everything else that you don't want? And then the other thing is like you start to really just lose trust in yourself. And you're losing trust in yourself because you've given all of your power away to everybody else around you and everything else around you. And you just have no power left. So what is there to trust when you've given all of your power away? So as you start to bring yourself back, right? And really start to come home to yourself, you allow yourself to start feeling again. You are actually listening to the first feeling and stop, people pleasing everything else. And it's not even just people pleasing, it's just pleasing everyone, everything else around you, right? Like you start to allow yourself to say, no, I don't want to do that. No, I can't. Or just no, because no is a complete sentence. No. Okay. Right? So this is you starting to take up space. This is you starting to show yourself, your heart, that you matter, your life, the people around you, that you matter. And this can feel a little bit uncomfortable to start to do these things. You have to start to be okay with sometimes disappointing others around you. And if they're disappointed by you saying no or not just agreeing with them for everything, that's okay, right? Like then be disappointed because I can't just cater to you. I can't just do everything you want me to do. And this is even at like in your job, right? Like, yes, we have a job to do. And also, how many things have you taken on where you feel so bogged down, where you're stressed, you're up at night, and now you can't sleep. You're not feeling good. And now maybe you start to come home to yourself. Now maybe you start to say, I'm sorry, I just can't handle that right now. And yes, someone might be disappointed. Can you just be okay with that? And the reason that they're disappointed, and maybe it's in you, but also maybe it's just because they're inconvenienced because they have to now find somebody else to do it. And can that just be okay with you? Because you're inconvenienced. Why can't someone else be inconvenienced for something that they need done? So I want you to start to see things differently. I want you to start to see things where you can say no. You could start to actually stand up for yourself. And that, yeah, sometimes people are going to get hurt, but as long as you're being kind and speaking from the heart, then you did everything that you could, right? And that's kind of what I come down to. Like if I have to have a hard conversation or if I have to say no to something, I do it from the heart. Like honestly, for me, and I say no as a complete sentence. And also, I think that for me, I like to do it and to say no in a kind way. No, I'm sorry. I'm just so busy right now. No, I'm sorry. I can't squeeze another thing in. You know, something that has been happening right now a lot lately is we get a ton of requests for donations for a million different schools and and it's like gift card donations or whatever, like, oh, can you do a reading donation, $30 here, $30 there, and it's like you can't say yes to everybody. And I learned that a long time ago, like, yeah, I want to say yes to everybody, but I'm a business. Like I can't say yes to everybody. I can't just keep giving away money all the time, right? So I had to start being really specific and strategic with who I said yes to and what I said yes to. So I have specific criteria and I try to plan them out at the beginning of the year of how much we're going to spend and have a budget. And then I have boundaries around it. So when you're saying yes or no or whatever, know that like if as long as you've created the boundary that that's okay. So when I have to say no to, especially right now at the end of the year, I've already maxed out my budget and for donations and I'm saying no to a lot of people. Like we just say, no, I'm sorry. And instead of just saying, no, good luck, right? It just feels cold. So for me, I'm like, no, we've already hit our donation quota for the year, but good luck, right? Like it's something like that where you can say no or set a boundary in a kind way that feels good for you, but still supports you. And you could do that not just with donations, right? This is my example, but you could do this with literally everything in your life. And you will feel good about it. I promise you. Because as you start to live into this, as you start to allow yourself to not abandon yourself anymore, to actually give back to you, your intuition becomes clear. You start to be able to listen again to what feels good for you. You now become actually magnetic to the things you want, not more work, but maybe more ease. Your relationships start to shift, and maybe people that were taking advantage of you fall off. And that's okay. Your life and business and things seem to grow a lot easier because you are giving back to you, and your everything in your life is an extension of you. So like your business is an extension of you. Your hobbies are an extension of you. Like all of the things are an extension of you. So if you are depleted, everything else is going to be depleted. And what will then begin to happen is you will start to actually live life, maybe create whatever it is from a place of authenticity, of thriving, of what actually feels right and good for you instead of surviving. So when I was being somebody that I wasn't in my corporate job, I was not being authentic. And I would have told you at the time that I was. Like at the time, I would have said, yeah, this is who I am. Like I'm being who I am when I'm there. I'm funny and I'll laugh with people and da da da, da and all this stuff. But really, there were so many moments that I was not. There were so many moments that grated against the person that I was. That for me, I recognize now how I was not being authentic to me, to who I was. And I want to explain this just a little bit here because this doesn't mean that, and I say this all the time, it's like, well, this is just who I am. No. What I'm saying is like I was willing to grow. And through some of those things, I did grow. But some of those things that were on repeat, like speaking in a certain manner or saying certain things or, whatever it might be, criticizing if I had to, like they were not in alignment with me. And I knew that. And I knew that it wasn't a growth factor. It wasn't something that I had to grow into. Obviously, it was something I had to learn from an experience, right? As a lesson for my life and my soul. But at the end of the day, it wasn't something that I had to just become. It wasn't raising my vibration up. And I knew that. It wasn't making me stronger. It wasn't making me better. It just made me feel like crap. And that's the thing. Like when you have to do something, let's say for work, that's going to push you out of the comfort zone. And maybe it's going to make you grow in a really great way. You're going to feel good at the end of the day about it. You're going to feel like, oh my God, that was crazy. I can't believe I stood up in the boardroom and said this and shared my idea. And you're going to feel good about it afterwards on some level. Even if you feel like it didn't go well, you're going to feel good about the step that you took in the right direction. However, when you have to become somebody that you don't want to be, and you have to say things, do things, etc., that don't feel in alignment with you and feel icky, you're not going to feel good at the end of the day. And that is the marker. Like it's like your body, your emotions, your energetic field are already trying to guide and lead the way. That's why intuition is important, right? So I want to talk to that because I don't want you to feel, I never want you to be a person that ever says, this is just who I am. Ever, because that version of you can always grow and evolve and leave behind the things that doesn't allow it to grow and evolve. And I'm telling you, when you stop abandoning yourself, your life all around you will truly start to rise up to meet you. And then you're going to get to know yourself on such a deeper level. And it's so amazing to get to know yourself on this level. It's so amazing to set those boundaries and stick to them and feel good about giving back to you. Truly, self-abandonment is learned. It is a learned thing. Like I said, as a kid, when you're set, better to be seen and not heard, and all of these things that we're taught as kids, and then take with us in areas where they shouldn't apply in life, it is learned. And so that means it can be unlearned. You just have to learn to make the unfamiliar familiar. So what is familiar to you, you now have to let go to become someone else, but that's going to be unfamiliar. And I promise you that if you keep acting in this way, in this manner, that's towards your highest good, that's towards what makes you feel good, that will actually, the new way of being will actually become familiar to you. Okay? So the moment that you decide to stand with you, you're standing with yourself and who you truly are. I'm telling you, life starts to look very, very different. Everything starts to shift. Your voice, your power, your energy, your future, they all come back online. Because now you're listening, you're being guided, and you're opening up, and everything starts to come back to you. And it's so beautiful and amazing. And I'm telling you, from a person that was abandoning themselves in some really big ways, you will learn to love and appreciate yourself so much more when you stop abandoning yourself and start taking your power back. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Spirit and Soul podcast. And I will see you on the next episode.